Ladies and gents, my name is Xander, aka Deislayers, and in this video, we're going to do a side-by-side comparison analysis of the Last Dance Sidearm versus the Last Hope Sidearm. Now, many of you have heard of the Last Hope, as I've seen plenty of videos out there and it's more well known. But one thing that you may not have heard of so far is this Last Dance Sidearm, and it's actually the sidearm that you get from the Vanguard. This thing is almost identical in every way, shape, and form to the Last Hope, and it's very, very powerful, both of which you guys can use either the Last Hope or the Last Dance in PvP, but I really wanted to do a side-by-side analysis of all their stats, as well as how much their damage output is, and to see which one of these two bad boys truly is the best among the two to play within PvP. The only thing left to do is to eviscerate that subscribe button, and let's jump right into the video. In order to do a full-on analysis of the Last Dance Sidearm and the Last Hope Sidearm, we have to know all of these guys' perks, and the reason for that is because that's going to show us exactly where their similarities are, where their differences are, and then also how they play in terms of overall playstyle from one Guardian to the next. So the very first item that we're going to discuss is the Last Hope, because this one is more familiar with everybody, and we gotta know all the intrinsic perks that are on it, including two, one of which is called Omolon Adaptive Frame, and the other which is called Zen Moment. Now, Omolon Adaptive Frame states that this weapon is well-rounded, reliable, and fires a 3-round burst. The reason that I like a 3-round burst in comparison to just a semi-auto or even that of a full auto weapon is because this 3-round burst gets the best of both worlds in the sense that I'm constantly having to be able to readjust to where exactly the aim is at. That way I'm not overexerting too many bullets, while at the same time conserving energy so that I hit more rounds going from one Guardian to the next. The other perk that this weapon's got is called Zen Moment, and this perk states that causing damage with this weapon increases its stability. This is very, very nice because no matter what kind of headshots or body shots that you're getting, as long as you're causing damage, that stability is always going to increase, which ultimately means that you're going to be able to hit more headshots because the recoil is going to be less and less and less. This weapon also has two sights, one of which is called Control SAS and Fairpoint SAS. Control SAS is a stable sight that increases handling while increasing stability at the exact same time. Fairpoint SAS is a pinpoint sight that significantly increases range but decreases stability and handling simultaneously. Now, in my humble opinion, I like to use on Control SAS, and that's because I get advantages in both handling and stability, while at the same time not having a decrease in any other base stat. With Fairpoints, it is very, very helpful to get a little bit of increased range, but at the same time, you are decreasing the stability and the handling, and so for me, that's not a fair enough trade-off, and so that's why I just want to have a boost in both the handling and the stability, and that's exactly what Control SAS does. Now, you can also have on one of two other perks on this weapon, one of which is called Ricochet Rounds, and the other which is called Flared Magwell. Ricochet Rounds states that this weapon's bullets ricochet off hard surfaces, giving a boost to both stability and range. Flared Magwell states that this weapon is optimized for recoil control, which increases stability and decreases the range ever so slightly. Now, one of these two perks you can choose from, and either one is very, very good, and it really just comes down to personal preference. If you want to have on that increase in both range and stability, then Ricochet Rounds is 110% the way to go. If you want to be able to have more recoil control and yet get a little bit of increased stability while losing a little bit of that range, then Flared Magwell is definitely the way to go as well. It really just comes down to personal preference, and what I like to use on is that of Ricochet Rounds. And the reason for this is because, number one, I get increased stability while at the same time increasing the range, and if someone's around a corner, I can just go ahead, shoot at the ground or shoot against the wall, and most likely, those rounds are going to ricochet and still hit the enemy Guardian. Where Flared Magwell, I'm still able to get that increased stability, but that range is slightly ever so decreased, and for me, you don't want to do that, even though you do have a better chance to have recoil control, which is ultimately going to lead you to more headshots. Now that you guys know all the perks there are on this weapon, the next weapon that we're going to discuss is the Last Dance, so that you guys can see all the exact perks on this weapon and really see how these two things differ. The Last Dance Sidearm also has two intrinsic perks, one of which is the exact same thing as the Last Hope, and that's called Omolon Adaptive Frame. Since we already know what that does, the other intrinsic perks on the Last Dance is one that's called Moving Target. And Moving Target states that you have increased movement speed and target acquisition when moving while aiming down the sights. This is a phenomenal and actually exceptional perk to have, and the reason for that is because this thing actually does one of two things. The first thing that it does is that, number one, you have increased target acquisition, aka aim assist, and at the exact same time, while you're aiming down your sights, you have increased movement speed, and what this causes is actually to have a faster strafing movement. Whether you're going from left to right or back to forward, you're going to be moving faster than what other Guardians are, and so that's going to allow them to miss more of their shots, while at the same time, you're going to hit more of your shots because you have that increased aim assist, aka target acquisition, with this moving target perk. This weapon also has two sights, one of which is called Target SAS, and the other which is called Tactic SAS. Target SAS is a sharp sight that increases range at the cost of losing stability and handling, while Tactic SAS is an accurate sight that slightly increases range without a decrease in any other base stat. To me, Tactic SAS is the only way to go here because you only get benefits without having to lose anything else, and so that's why that range boost from Tactic SAS is by far the best way to go. Now this weapon also has one of two perks that you can choose from, and that's either Extended Mag or Armor Piercing Rounds. Extended Mag states that this weapon has a greatly increased magazine size, but reloads much slower. The magazine jumps from 24 to 36 bullets, which is an incredible boost in bullet magazine. Now the next thing that you can choose from here is Armor Piercing Rounds, and that states that this weapon's bullets cause extra damage to shields, overpenetrates, and gives you a slight boost in range as well. Now either one of these two things is very beneficial, and once again, just like the Last Hope, it really comes down to personal preference. If you want to be able to shoot down more Guardians within one magazine, then Extended Mag is by far the best way to go. If you want to be able to overpenetrate shields and also demolish Titan shields, then Armor Piercing Rounds is again the best way to go, because not only are you going to be able to crush those shields, but you're also going to be able to get that boost in range, and so when you combine that with the other perks that are on this weapon, you're going to have the best range in an overall range stat. Personally, I like to have on Armor Piercing Rounds because not only does that go ahead and boost the range, but at the same time it overpenetrates those shields, and it can also overpenetrate one Guardian from the next with the exact same bullet, and that's what I like to have on Armor Piercing Rounds. Now that you guys have a very solid understanding of all the perks that are on the Last Dance, as well as all the perks that are on the Last Hope, we can go ahead and begin our comparison analysis of all these perks, as well as their damage outputs, their same exact stats, and everything right now. When comparing each one of these weapons, they're both actually made by Omolon, and that also means that they're going to have the same intrinsic perk called Omolon Adaptive Frame. Ultimately, what this means is that each one of these weapons is a 3-round burst weapon, and that means that they're both very powerful for that melee range distance as well as close range combat, and if you happen to have a Guardian in any one of those situations for either one of these weapons, then you are truly going to decimate that Guardian 110% of the time. Now the way in which these two things differ is the fact that one is designed for stability, while one is designed for target acquisition / range. The Last Hope is designed for stability because it's got Zen Moment, Flared Magwell, and it's also got Control SAS. Each one of those sight / perks is designed so that they're increasing the stability of the weapon while at the same time increasing the handling, and so now you can see why the Last Hope is designed for stability. Now you also have on the Last Dance, and the Last Dance is designed for range as well as target acquisition because you have on Moving Target along with Armor Piercing Rounds and even that of the Tactic SAS sight. Each one of those perks or sights is designed so that it obviously increases the range or also increases the target acquisition. So if you wanted to have one of those two builds, I would strongly recommend that you use one or the other, going for the stability, aka the Last Hope, or for the target acquisition / range, and that would be the Last Dance. Another thing that's very similar from one weapon to the next is that each one of these weapons is going to be having that of the exact same damage output because both of them are in the exact same art type, meaning that they're going to do 26 points of damage in the head and 20 points of damage in the body. Now the way in which you're going to get those damage outputs is very different because once again, the Last Hope is designed for stability, and the only way that's going to happen is if you have a couple shots in the Guardian and then you're going to get more headshots. Inversely related to this, the Last Dance is designed to do the exact same thing, but the way in which it does it is through target acquisition. And so the closer that you are to a Guardian and being able to stray from one way to the next, that's how you're going to be able to get more headshots until you can clearly see that these two weapons are doing the exact same thing, but the way in which they achieve that headshot damage and body shot damage is very different from one thing to the next. What this really all comes down to is personal preference, my friends. If you want to have a weapon that has either increased range along with target acquisition, and with that target acquisition you're going to be able to get more strafing, then that means that the Last Dance is 110% the best way for you. If you want to have a weapon that gets more stability as you obviously are using the weapon, and the Last Hope is again the best way for you. Personally, I much rather prefer to have on the Last Dance over the Last Hope, and that's because I believe that Moving Target is such a phenomenal perk combined with Armor Piercing Rounds and that Tactic SAS sight. However, you could also use the Last Hope because Zen Moment, along with Flare Magwell or Ricochet rounds and that Control SAS sight, is phenomenal just the same. Now, I'm not going to say exactly which one is better or the other, I'm just going to say which one that I prefer, and that's the Last Dance. However, I know that a lot of other people are going to differ from this, and so I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this down in the comment section below. Lastly, go ahead and check out some of my other new videos, as you can see right there on the screen. If you happen to enjoy this one, then you're definitely going to enjoy those as well. That's pretty much all that I've got for you as of right now, and so as always, Deislayers, great gaming, until next time.